Did it record?
The PR I made basically addresses one use case that we had to be able to describe the life cycle, like expiration of any crypto material like tokens, keys, and so on. We already had that, but only for keys. So this basically merges two asset types, the related crypto material and key, into a single one. So this life cycle applies to all of them. Then at the end, this addresses this use case that Lars contributed.
Got it. So related crypto material type, and it's got a list of all of them. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. That makes sense. Any questions on this PR, Nicholas?
Support.
Merge, ship it.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks good to me. Okay. And it doesn't actually affect the work that I'm working on either. I haven't had a time to commit it yet, but I've been able to strip out the enums that we've agreed that we want to externalize and make those a little bit more dynamic. So I was able to strip those out and into its own little sub schema, and that's also ready to go. I just need to look at it one more time. So I'll commit that today. Let's see. Okay. I think the one big outstanding thing that I think we need to solve is the evidence. We looked at, I think there was like 2 areas of evidence that CBOM supported, and we wanted to figure out how to merge those concepts into the component evidence portion of the spec.
Yeah, we had a discussion with Nicholas just before about that. We looked at the evidence properties and the ones that we had in detection context. So that's basically where detection context tells which tools are used to write the CBOM, using which web methods, and where it detected it. So I think this very well fits this the evidence, also including confidence levels. There are just a couple of properties that we had in the detection context that we think could also be useful to have in the evidence, that we could merge potentially.
Okay. Did you have ideas for how that would look like? A proposal of sorts?
Yes, I can quickly share my screen if this works. Permission to do that. Evidence, right? Do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, right, confidence, I think that's very useful. So what we had basically in the CBOM spec was for each property in algorithm property, we had an evidence, right? So
confidence.
A confidence, sorry, yeah. Confidence. And using evidence, I think it's possible to attribute one confidence level to a component like a crypto asset. And we think that's actually sufficient. So we don't have a use case at the moment where we would have to assign a confidence level for each of the properties. So I think that's very good. And then tools. Right here we have occurrences, right? So here we can say the location where something occurred, which is, I think that's meant to be a file path, right? On the file system.
Yeah, it is. Oh, so you want to add offset and line number? Okay, that makes sense.
We have a couple of more ones. So these offset and line numbers. So let's quickly switch over here. So we so this is an array, right? And also the evidence is also an array, I think, or the occurrence is also an array. So that's great. But file path, I think that's covered. Line numbers, that's something we would need because like for source code, if you do source code scanning, it occurs at one or more line numbers. And then we have offsets, do binary analysis, something occurs at one or more offsets. We scan for symbol names or keywords. These are additional things we have. And then we have additional context, just if there is something else. Like if one wants to add something like a code snippet where something occurred. So yeah, I think that would be the discussion, right? If it makes sense to add those two occurrences.
Right.
Or if this can be covered somehow with the existing evidence and occurrence property.
I think, let me go back to my documentation, unless you have it handy. Let's see, Cyclone documentation. It's occurrences, and then we've got just the location. Okay.
Yeah, I can also stop.
Yeah. So that was line number. You had symbols, and
Offset.
you had offset. Okay.
And also keywords. Yeah, we
What was the
can debate about
keywords?
that. So keywords, for example, we use now for example when we find some crypto call in source code to then put out the function and the class maybe where it was, instantiated. So some kind of keyword evidence to just see right away what was happening or where it was called, which context. But yeah, it's debatable if we need it. I mean, it's not mandatory for all our use cases, but it just maybe provides additional information.
Would the keywords actually, I mean, would that fall under the identity methods? You could specify the technique used to abstract those keywords and then the value of those keywords. Does it make sense to put it there? Or I guess I'm not understanding the purpose. Help me understand it.
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit more understandable with what Matt wrote in the chat with this pattern thing, just like adding some kind of context where the crypto asset was maybe detected, and sometimes could be a pattern like a function call and in a specific class with specific, I don't know, whatever, or maybe in a binary code it's different. So but for source code, that is where we just count its own technique where we generate CBOMs. There we use it to just add the function call in the class and maybe also the number of parameters, so you have a little bit more context.
Got it. Got it. Okay, I think I understand now.
So would it make sense to add this to additional context or something like that? Or
yeah, maybe we can put that together in some sense. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, these are things that we've often wanted to do, even just for any just basic license scanning, I'll just say. So I think it has applicability to machine learning as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we just need to figure out the best place to put that. Because that could be applicable to identity, it could be applicable to occurrences. I mean, we could always put it in both. I mean, define it outside of identity and occurrences so it's reusable.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Was there anything else? So that was a detection context. What was the other thing as well? I think there was another one, wasn't there?
Yeah, the confidence levels. Yeah.
Oh, the confidence levels.
Yeah, they seem to be well covered.
Yep.
By experts.
Did you have were you going to, Basil, were you going to submit a pull request to kind of merge that into occurrences?
Yeah, I
Or
can do it.
what was the plan there?
Yeah, sure. If I think if we have some, you think it's a good idea to put it there, right? I can do a pull request, and then maybe if there is some discussion about how to do it, then we can
Yeah.
there. But yes,
Yeah.
I will do a pull request for that.
Okay. Yeah, I think most of those fields actually make sense. The one that I'm kind of hung up on, I think, is the keywords. Everything else is kind of self-explanatory. I think it fits really well, actually.
Well, I'll just say that, in terms of like license scanning or scanning, you're always scanning for patterns, and keywords is the most basic pattern. So
Right. Yeah, I like your higher level idea of supporting a pattern. And a keyword would be just one of many.
Then you can just rename it to pattern, I think.
But again, that kind of ties into, methods, technique, and then within the technique, source code analysis. Well, a type of that would be a pattern. So,
Yeah. But we would like to, not sure if it's possible there, but we would also like to list what are the patterns actually that were searched, right? So
yeah,
that's
sure.
yeah, in our case, like in case license, we have regex templates basically, or
yeah, like a regex, exactly. Yeah, we have a regex, and we find this crypto asset, then we would like to add the regex there.
Yeah, I just don't know where the best place to fit that is.
yeah, it's hard because, like I said, like when we were going to start putting some of these things as properties in the license field, because the license field has become way too complex. So yeah, object, I should say.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we the other ones I think are self-explanatory. Why don't you do a PR for just those, for the things that we don't think we're going to have an issue on. And then once I merge that in, then let's do another let's talk about the maybe take why don't you take a look at, if you could, take a look at the identity methods, techniques, and how we specify the values there, because you can specify, source code analysis, and then you can provide a value of what it is that you found, for example. See if that would work, or if we can reuse that in occurrences maybe. so that you can specify the techniques to identify the occurrences themselves rather than just the identity of something. And let's do a separate PR just for that, because I think this one's gonna require a little bit more thinking through, in my opinion.
Right.
But I guess we can put our use case in, as you described, in the as you know, putting the keywords in the values. Maybe also we can think of maybe adding an array of values, not string, so we can add multiple keywords and multiple patterns. But yeah, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I want to be able to support that use case. It's just what's the best way to do it using the evidence. So maybe between today and maybe next week, if this can kind of be fleshed out into some kind of PR, I think that would be amazing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I will do we'll do a first PR for without patterns keyword, and then.
Okay.
Thank
you.
And yeah, there is one more PR that will probably come.
Okay.
Because we had an internal discussion about the use case. A colleague of us did used CBOM in our version right now to identify or to describe some IPsec connections, VPN, including the algorithms there. So, and yeah, he wrote some policies basically that some customers or companies could have, right? And had some feedback for that. So I think in general it worked very well. He had some suggestions, I think, that we also would like to add, because we have can share my screen about that. Right. So we have here under algorithm properties. Right now we have this property called variant, where we encode different things in there, such as the key length, the padding, other things, right, that are that depend on the algorithm itself. And so the feedback was that this was kind of not so easy to use, right? Because you cannot just validate the schema and take, for example, the key length that in this case would be used or needed from this variant field, right? I mean, it's there, but you have to parse that field as well. So in this case, the use case was to be able to describe, okay, we have AES with key length of 128-bit, because this identifies this instance of AES. So the suggestion was to add a field key length, which I think for this case makes sense, but after thinking about it, what our proposal is to add a property called parameter set name, right? Which is a property that identifies, so I have a description here and an explanation that identifies the instance of an algorithm. So which is not always the same unit, right? So you have, for AES, it's usually the key length. There are 3 different key lengths. Like SHA-2 also has 3 integers here, but they are not the key length, but they are the length of the digest output of the function. And then if you look at Kyber, the new quantum safe encryption scheme, there are also 3 numbers, but they are not key lengths. They are no lengths at all, but they are 2 parameters multiplied k times n, and it's 512, 768, and 1024. And yeah, I mean, nobody actually knows of course they are known, but nobody remembers what are the key lengths in that case, right? So nobody identifies the algorithm by the key lengths. Also the unit here is then depends on the algorithm. But after all, the idea here is to, let's say if you have policy AES 128, you can look up the parameter set name, that's 128. Or if the policy says use Kyber 768, you will find it here without having to parse this variant thing. So we would propose to remove the variants and instead add this parameter set name. That's one suggestion we have. We'd like
Okay.
to. And the second one is to add a property called standard name. Because also here we have different standardization bodies, like IANA registers some names used in IPsec. IETF has different RFCs, right? NIST publishes FIP specifications. Yeah, many other standardization bodies, ECMA or others, they have identifiers. For example, in this IPsec case, that's the identifier for this AES instance, right? And we would like to be able to express that as well, right? So that.
So the question is, are these published standards? And in the case, I mean, there are many standards that, they're all over the place where you want to reference standards, whether it be, especially policy standards and security compliance standards and whatever. But generally, they boil down to an RFC ID or URI. I mean, won't these things eventually have some published identifying URI because they'll have a schema published, right? Or they'll have some specification published. They'll boil down to an identifier they publish. And it usually takes the form of the IRI or something, right?
In this case, it's basically there is an RFC that links to IANA, which registers the name. So if you want to get the standard name, you have to look up the IANA registry. For other RFCs, it's directly in the RFC, right? But
so then is it a standard or is it a registry?
Yeah, it's the registry, right? The IANA is the registry for the name, yeah, I mean, in this case, right, before this policy.
Yeah, I think that then I think that we should acknowledge this. If it's maintaining a list of identifiers in a domain, it's a registry, called a registry. That's my opinion. And then give more information about where the registries can be found.
Yeah, I think for parsing, it might make it a bit different, right? Then you would have to look up the registry and then find it there. But this is basically, I mean, what we can express here, if that way is, okay, we have an algorithm, AES 128, right? Which is a parameter set name, and a standard name, which is this one here.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a lot of registries built in. Obviously, we've got CVS IDs, CWD IDs. We've got IDs all over the place, and they infer obviously you can infer a registry from that. But
yeah. So you say it's already there are properties to express that. So if that's the
no,
case,
I think a lot of these things are hard coded because a lot of them are for vulnerability use cases. But and even package URL could be considered a registry of sorts. So, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out. Always looking for abstractions, and I'm just saying that let's calling it a standard. Usually, there's a specification, and a specification usually has a schema of some type. So, anyway.
But if I understand it correctly, you would suggest to call it registry name instead? Or?
Probably to be.
Well, I think it's both, right? Because we need the name of what the algorithm is basically called, and then we also need to know who's the entity that's actually calling it. And I think that's the part that's missing.
Also, like a URI or to the
registry? Yeah, exactly. I said it has to have more information, more context about who that provider is, where it's defined at, and like that.
That makes sense, right? To give an indication where it comes from. Yeah.
Yeah, because like right now, I don't know if this is from IANA, if this is IETF, if this is mentioned in FIPS, all the above. If we could capture that, I think that would give us as a consumer where to look up that name.
Yeah, eventually I mean, for automation purpose, it's all about automation. I need to know eventually where I go to see, is this value you're giving me a valid thing in some endpoint registry, hopefully, or I can, somehow, if at the worst case, I have to manually go there and look it up on a website. But ideally, we're all trying to move towards automation. So we need hyperlinks and URIs and IRIs to validate these things in an automated manner. But yeah.
So is this actually called a standard, or is it called something else? Is this the algorithm name?
Yeah, but it's algorithm name according to a certain standard, because
Yeah.
there are different standards that describe the same algorithm, but they have different names for the same thing. Like
I would take a look at, so we did something similar. We did something similar in for vulnerabilities, where the same vulnerability is called, like, has a CVE identifier in the NVD, but then it's called something else over in Sneak. It's called something else in Sonatype, but yet they're describing the exact same thing. And we have this concept called aliases. So you can describe, here's this identifier for this vulnerability, and this is what that thing is called in some of these other places. That might be really useful in this context, maybe. If not, I think just adding, you can either make this an object, or you could just add additional field that would describe where you found this name at.
Look at the vulnerability then, and otherwise, doing either an object or additional property for the registry.
But everything else seems, that this is fairly simple. I think this can be worked out. Basically,
then we would remove the variant.
Sure.
And we say, okay, if there are some, if one wants to describe a certain property for an algorithm that we don't have as a property explicitly here, you could use key value pairs to do that.
Okay. Is that the elegant way to do that? Is that the way we want to do it?
Yeah, is there? I'm not sure if there's a different approach to do that, right? Because we can. It's hard to do an exhaustive list of all the different.
Yeah, it's not possible.
So, I mean, Kyber alone has, I don't know, a couple of different parameters, right? But someone could want to all describe somehow, right? But it's,
maybe in a future version we can allow to link some kind of sub schemas. I remember there's a schema for describing elliptic curves from one website, also a JSON schema that is quite big, but a lot of parameters. So maybe we allow to add such a sub schema or sub component to the algorithm properties in the future.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah, for a future release, probably, right?
Yeah, I think just adding an additional field for where you got that name from, I think would be good.
Just add something.
Yeah.
Then either do this as an object or.
Right. Exactly. Okay.
Yeah. So that's basically the second field. That's that.
Okay, good. Thank you. Self-explanatory. Just need to figure out the best way to represent that, but yeah, it looks good to me.
Okay. Yeah, good.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I had also in this discussion, we had one question actually that's related to PURLs. Because what we initially envisioned was to use or adapt kind of this PURL schema to also describe a crypto asset, right? Which is, we had some examples for it, but it's somehow, if the feedback was that this is not so intuitive, right? Because I think for a PURL, you expect this to be a path to somewhere where you find a software package, right? Like a
Right.
URL or a Git commit.
Yeah, Perl is about well, two things: identity and location. Most Perl types support location, but not all. There are a few Perl types that we have that just they're locationless. They're lost souls, but they do have the support for identity.
Yeah. Question was then basically was I mean, it's kind of obvious for software packages, right? URLs,
Right.
but for other situations, I think, I mean, you also have hardware, right? Or now with crypto asset. Does it make sense to have PURLs for these use cases?
No. Not everything can be represented as Perls. We know that. Cyclone actually does support hardware identifiers, so all the G10, like basically your UPC codes. Like if you were to scan a box of widgets, right? We actually support all those UPC identifiers in the spec. There's another thing called global model numbers, which is used a lot. I think it's actually a requirement for like medical devices in Europe. Also a GS1 standard. But yeah, most of the hardware specific things that we support for identifiers are all GS1 standards, and there's like 3 of them, and then the G10 has got a bunch of different variants depending on what country in the world you're actually in.
Yeah.
Those are handled today with CycloneDX properties. We actually have a device taxonomy that we do for that. And we'll be expanding that based on some feedback from CISA. They published an HBOM thing. They got all the mappings wrong, but the taxonomy that they actually came up with was actually fairly good. So I think we identified some missing things, so we'll be adding that into the property taxonomy. And then the idea there is once that gets enough usage, because we've got like I know we've got a few different defense contractors using this. We got one large like OEM maker of things that are using the device taxonomy. Once we get enough kind of feedback on what works and what doesn't, the goal is then to kind of like we have crypto properties, we're going to have a device, probably device info type of block within a component as well, with all those properties actually fully supported in the spec rather than externalized with properties.
Right. Yeah.
When there is no, sorry, just one quick question. When there is no package URL for component, what is then the bomb ref? Oh, is that defined or set? Is that just a UUID or?
Yeah, it's just a string. So just make sure it's unique for that particular bomb. You know,
Okay.
I think UUID is the recommended if Perl is not available for that particular component type. Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
But yeah, you can make it as anything you want as long as it's unique within the context of the bomb itself.
Yeah. Yeah, we had it in an example where we used PURL to do that, but we just removed that. At the moment, we don't have a specific use case where we need a globally unique identifier for a crypto asset. Right. Maybe in the future, then you can think about some taxonomy for that, but not at the moment.
Okay. That might actually be something that have you talked to the folks at MITRE since that blog post went out? Out of curiosity.
Yes, we did.
Okay. Was the feedback positive?
Actually, there was no feedback yet. One of our colleagues just sent it out to the group like 1 or 2 days ago via email. Yeah, but no feedback yet.
Yeah, it'd be good to see what their thoughts are going to be, especially in the context of this release that's going out in about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So you might want to forward that to them once it actually goes public.
That's a good point.
Yeah, because you raised a valid point, right? I mean, do we want a globally unique registry of all these things? I don't know. Is it within the context of TC54 to do it, or should somebody else do it? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good
Okay.
question. Maybe that's something for Mitra, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they have
Absolutely.
vulnerability databases, so it's kind of a custodian for these kind of things.
Yeah. I mean, they basically, if you think about how you think about how CPE worked initially, which is a common platform enumeration, which is basically a catalog of all vendors and their products. I mean, they were the originators for that and the custodians for that for a very, very long time. That was taken over by NIST several years ago, but I mean, they were the ones that actually made it kind of a reality. And I think there's maybe an opportunity for them to do something similar here. Whether they want to is, that's another story.
Are you aware that Scan OSS have a repo called Perl2 CPE, where they automatically, that was really nice. I was really surprised that these exist and that they maintain it.
Yeah, and there's some really interesting work from NextB under the About Code project, I believe. He's got, I think, something similar.
Nice.
And he has that team has basically abstracted away the CPEs because they're just not automatable in the context of like a DevOps pipeline, right? But he's basically taken the NVD and has made it. It's all open source, and you can use Perl instead of CPEs.
Nice.
Kind of like what OSS Index does today from Sonatype, but this is all open source. So I know his team has spent a lot of time doing that. I think the project's called Vulnerable Code, if I remember right.
No. Okay.
Yeah. Take a look at that if you
get
a spare moment.
It's really good.
After you're done reading your brand new book. All right. We've got 15 minutes left. For some reason, the PR has broken the build, Basil. I need to figure out why. I'll do that after this call, maybe. The error message is not helpful. It just gives me a stack trace when it's trying to generate the 1.6 schema documentation. So this is a problem with the documentation generation thing. It's blowing up on the 1.6 on this PR. So I don't know why.
But it's not the schema validation or something.
No, it doesn't seem to be. It's not the actual validation itself. It's a documentation generation thing that's blowing up on this PR. Invalid literal for int. I don't know what that. I don't think that's related to your PR either. So I don't know. I wonder if it has something to do with size.
The schema error. Can't resolve reference definition size.
Size, yeah. I think it has something to do with size. I don't know if I move size over the way that you have it. So if you did this in the CBOM, repo, and expected it to work over here, it probably doesn't work identically the same.
Oh yeah, right. I have, yeah, size is an integer, and here it's, okay, yeah, I see it. So what I added was for Cypher, I have a reference to definition size, but it was actually just an integer. That's
Right.
oh good.
Yeah. So I think once that gets corrected, then I think everything should pass. That error message was not helpful though. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I can do another, just a quick PR after the call that should fix it.
All right. That's fine. At least we know what the problem is. Okay. I know we've got like 12 minutes left. I think evidence is the big one. And then we're going to meet back in a week to kind of talk about the proposals for that and hopefully look at a PR, right? Is there anything else that we want to tackle within the next 11 minutes? Or is this kind of a good stopping point?
For me, that's good.
Okay.
Oh, me too. Yes.
All right, very good. Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much. I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Look forward to get this PR in. I'll merge that as soon as it's kind of ready. And then, yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what we come up with for the evidence stuff next week. So that's going to be really interesting to see. So thank you again. I'll send the links out in Slack for the press release that's going out in just a little bit, so you can socialize it or whatever you want to do with it. And have a great day. Enjoy your
Thanks.
reading this weekend, Nicholas.
Thanks.
Take care, guys.
Have a
All
great
right,
day too.
cheers.
Bye bye.
Bye.